What was the South like before the Civil War from the 1800s to the 1860s? In this video, you will learn about what life was like in the southern states before the American Civil War. You'll see images, maps, and graphs to help you describe the geography, economy, society, and way of life in the South. You will see images regarding slavery. We will not talk a lot about what slavery was like, as you would already have had lessons on that, but you will see some primary source images reflecting that period of American history. Some helpful tips for this video. Please pause or rewind the video at any time. Pause at the self-check questions in the video to see how well you've mastered the content. The self-check questions will reappear in your escape room activity, so keep them in mind. You ready? Let's go. We will be learning about the southern states, or the slave states that you see in yellow on this map. What was the climate and geography like in the southern states? The South experienced long, warm summers with lots of rain. They had a long growing season and fertile soil ideal for growing crops on large plantations. Check for understanding. Pause the video at any time if you need to reflect and think about your answers. Why was large plantation farming common in southern states? A. Rocky, infertile soil. B. Long growing season with lots of rain. C. Fertile soil. D. Both B and C are correct. E. All choices are correct. All right. Did you choose both B and C are correct? If you did, you know this material. The southern states had large plantation farming because of their long growing season, lots of rain, and very fertile soil. The southern states' economy. The goods and services produced, sold, and bought in a region. The economy of the South was based on agriculture and slavery. Cotton, tobacco, rice, sugarcane, and indigo, a plant used to make blue dye, were sold as cash crops. Enslaved labor was used to plant, tend, and harvest these crops on plantations. Cotton became a popular cash crop in the South with the invention of Eli Whitney's cotton gin. The cotton gin decreased the amount of time and labor needed to remove seeds from the raw cotton. You'll see on the right a cotton gin at Westfield, Georgia demonstration. It took about 10 hours for one single enslaved person to separate the seeds by hand from 1 pound of cotton. Using the cotton gin, 2 enslaved people can clean up to 50 pounds of cotton in that same 10 hours. Now that cotton could be cleaned faster with fewer laborers, Southerners began to grow more and more cotton. You would think that the cotton gin would decrease slavery. However, plantation owners will plant more and more cotton, turning any available field into a cotton field. So they would use more enslaved labor to pick the cotton by hand. In the end, the cotton gin leads to an increase in slavery. Cotton production increased to the point that the southern U.S. supplied 75% of the world's cotton, selling it to places like Great Britain. The Deep South, the states of South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, became known as the Cotton Kingdom, growing that cotton otherwise known as white gold. You'll see in the graph that as more and more cotton was produced, there would be more and more enslaved people. Slavery was seen as essential to the South's economy. By the 1860s, the slave population in America had grown from the original 20 in 1619 to 4 million. Check for understanding. Pause the video if you need to. What was the South's economy based on? A. Factories, manufacturing, and trade. B. Cash crops and slavery. C. Farms. The answer is B. Cash crops and slavery. Check for understanding. Pause when you need to. The cotton gin leads to an increase in slavery. True or false? The correct answer is true. Life in the South. As mentioned previously, we will not focus on the experiences of the enslaved person, as you will have learned about that before this activity. Instead, we're going to take a look at who owned slaves, and we're going to take a look at how and why people defended slavery. Enslaved Africans were not seen as people, but as property. Owners had complete control and power over the enslaved person. Typical workdays lasted 16 to 18 hours. It was very common for families to be separated. Wealthy plantation owners ruled the South politically and economically. There was a huge gap between the rich and poor among the white South. 25% of Southerners owned enslaved people, with less than 3% owning 20 or more enslaved people, as you can see on the graph. 75% of Southerners did not own slaves and lived on small farms. Now, while most Southerners did not own slaves, they will still defend slavery. Many will defend it as proof of white superiority. Poor whites took comfort in the idea that they were equal to plantation owners. In addition, they hoped to own enslaved people one day. Another defense for slavery involved maintaining that slavery actually improved the lives of African Americans, that the life in America was better than life in their home country. In addition, Bible scriptures will be used to further support slavery. When we talked about the North, we talked about northern states and railroads. And it's important to note that the railroad track miles in the South were not as extensive or as much as you saw in the northern states. Railroads were mostly used to transport cash crops to markets in the southern states, and each state in the South had its own type of track, making it difficult to connect the lines. This will become important later on during the Civil War, that the South having fewer railroad track miles will be a weakness for them in fighting the war. Check for understanding. Pause the video if you need time to reflect on your answers. Why did the South have fewer railroad track miles? A, most railroads were used to transport cash crops to market. B, each state used its own type of track, making it difficult to connect the lines between states. C, railroads were difficult to build. D, both A and B are correct. E, all choices are correct. Why did the South have fewer railroad track miles? If you chose D, both A and B are correct. You got this one. Let's do one more. Check for understanding. Pause the video if you need time to reflect on your answers. Southerners will defend slavery, stating white superiority using scripture from the Bible and that slavery in America was an improvement over life in Africa. True or false? The answer is true. Now that you've learned about the South before the Civil War, it's time to use your knowledge to fix the Enigma Express. This is your third challenge. You're almost there.